Alrighty, ladies and gentlemen. Ladies and gentlemen of the chat, my lads, my ladettes, my comrades. What's going on? It's your boy. We're going to be doing a little tier list today. We're going to be doing every single god, not just Soul Lane, because in my opinion, literally everything's viable in Soul Lane. So if we were going to make a Soul Lane tier list, I'd just have every single one of these characters in A tier. And there you go. That's what the Soul Lane tier list would be. So 2 videos in 1. Bam. There you go. But we are going to be doing this live with the Twitch chat here. Let me see if we can show you guys. Everybody say hi. Everybody say hi to the YouTube and hi to yourselves, I guess, maybe in the future. Come on, we got an ad? Are you kidding me? Well, I'm not going to give free advertising on my stream. That's for sure. A double advertisement, you know, if I'm not going to get the credit for it. One sec. We'll go back to it. If I'm not going to get the monetization from that, I'm not going to show the ad. Wait, I'm getting the monetization from it because it's my own stream. Does that work? Oh my God. Okay, this is about to be, we're taking this too far. Look, you guys are over here. Can I zoom in? What is going on right now? My head is hurting.
On YouTube.
Okay, we're never doing that ever again. Get that out of here. To the Brim Keeper, thank you for the 2 months of Twitch Prime. Welcome back to the Fonzo family. That actually started hurting my head. We'll forget about it. Okay, we'll actually get started with the video and the tier list here. Stone, thanks for gifting sub to Pro Montas. Welcome to the Fonzo family. So, like I said, it is going to be live. So I'm going to, after every god, this might take 8 hours if I do this, but after every god, I'm going to look over to chat and see if you guys agree or disagree with me. If you agree with me, then you're correct. If you disagree with me, then I'm just going to disregard your opinion. I don't care. Achilles, starting off, you know, we're going A to Z, right? So Achilles coming in at number 1. Where's Achilles? Oh my gosh, where's Achilles? Kind of a good flex pick. Wait, B tier, S tier? There's no S plus or anything like that. Let me fix that real quick. S plus. S. Oh my gosh, are you kidding me? My intro's ruined. Man. What is this? A. B. C. D. I guess our lowest tier is going to be D. No, we'll have an E. We'll also have an A+. We'll have an A+ as well. Up here. No, we're going to remove the D. If you know what I mean. We'll have an A+. I think these are more important. I don't think there's really any god that's so horrible. Okay, there we go. This is what we're doing. And we'll zoom in a little bit just so you guys can maybe see a little bit better. Okay? Although we just zoomed in, so now we can't see. Okay, there we go. Now you guys can see all the tiers. I don't know what I'm saying. Starting off with Achilles. Achilles, I actually think is probably around A+. I think he's a little bit better now. I think he's a good matchup into Cthulhu, and Cthulhu is a really good pick. They just buffed him. I think he's decent with the Soul Eater. He's also decent with the Bruiser build as well, just because, you know, he can go into his armor stance and be tankier than other people would be with the same exact build. And he's also a decent flex. He can be played support, jungle, and solo. I think his best role is solo, but yeah. So I think he's around A+ right now with the current meta. Agni, like always, his name starts with A, so therefore he's an A. No, Agni's kind of just the pinnacle of balance in my opinion. I think he's slightly underrated by some people, especially, I mean, if you guys have seen my Agni, then you'd be putting him in S+. But regardless, Agni, very good pinnacle of balance god, and I think he maybe is teetering towards A+ because of his application of like stuff like Spear of the Magus, the Reaver, and stuff like that. But both those items did just get nerfed. So Moose and Cobb, I'm gonna throw an A+. Maybe A+, hovering around both of those. Decent mid laner, decent ADC, pretty easy to run down and kill. So in general, especially on the ranked streets, he probably isn't that great of a god just because you can run him down. But he can snowball really well, and he also kind of pops off from ahead like real hard. Probably one of the better hunters from ahead. Opwash, I would put in C. There are a lot of healers being played right now. There's a lot of double lifesteal, so maybe he's slightly undervalued for that reason. But I say that every time healers are in the meta, and he's still just kind of a bad god. He's kind of fallen off really hard. The only time that he's been like a really good god ever, to be honest, is when Soul Reaver and Spear of the Magus were absolutely busted, and he has 4 damaging abilities and applied it really well, and that was in Season 5. So it's been a while since then. Just kind of a bad god. Very easy to run down and kill. Like I said, maybe slightly undervalued because of all the sustain right now, but who cares? On her, I think another god that's kind of just like overall one of the pinnacles of balance in the game. There's been some times in the meta where he's been like S, A+, never been like the game-breaking god or anything right now, but he's slightly less valuable because magic ADCs are very prevalent right now, and because if you're going to play a hunter, a physical hunter, there's just better options like Heim. It's probably your number one, obviously. Amaterasu, I'll throw an S. She is very, very close to just being S+. She's probably the best solo laner in the game, the best warrior, definitely. Doesn't really have a bad laning phase anymore. I mean, I've probably talked about it so many times before, especially in gameplays with her, but they buffed her too to make it absolutely ridiculous. So it's really, really good in lane. She has crazy sustain, much more sustain than most people in the solo lane, and obviously has one of the best team fights out of not just warriors, but guardians as well. And it's very, very good around objectives because of her passive and her one. So I'll throw her an S. Anubis, actually, I kind of think is slightly underrated in general by people. I think you'll see Anubis a lot in like the gold rank streets. But Anubis he's a very snowbally character, and people don't really know how to deal with the double lifesteal build. I think at all ranks, the Bancroft's Typhons, or if you're an ADC, Ring of Akate Typhons. But definitely a god that you can kind of get some sneak wins with, and I think maybe slightly undervalued. Even though he's pretty easy to kill, he's also kind of hard to kill because of the double lifesteal build. Quang, another god I think is probably, as far as like ranked and everything goes, is probably A+ right now because of the ring builds and the stuff that you can go. He is definitely one of the top jungle carries. The only reason I don't have him in S or S+ is that I still think that like Erendite hard counters him. There's a lot of matchups that he just gets absolutely dumpstered by, like Nemesis, Susano, even Set I think is really, really good into him, Arachne as well. So that's the only reason I wouldn't put him higher, but definitely probably the best magical jungler in the game besides maybe Hebo. Hebo's probably up there with him. Afro still kind of busted in my opinion, probably S. She gets banned a lot in Grandmasters ranked. She might not get banned as much in the lower levels, but with the right team play and everything like that, she is such an annoying god. You could probably put her in A+ if you were considering all levels of ranked, but at the same time, I think her potential is kind of insane, and as well in ranked healing is really, really important in kind of crazy strong, so I'd put her in A. Apollo, I don't know. I'd have to get a hunter's opinion on it to be completely certain on it, but he's kind of easy to dive. I mean, he can peel for himself decently well, but he doesn't have that same threat that a lot of, obviously, the magical ADCs do right now, but even some of the physical hunters, he doesn't turn on a tank as well as like a Hui does, or a Heim, or even like a Jing Wei. If you're going to play Apollo, why not just play Jing Wei at the end of the day? To be honest, they both have relatively the same mobility, and Jing Wei is just kind of better in most aspects. Only thing you can maybe do with him is the Silver Branch build with him. Get some good value out of that with his passive. But Arachne, the auto attack items right now I think are way too strong. She's not really good in SPL because she kind of is a cheese character, and she does fall off late game. And as long as you don't let her snowball on you, then it's really hard. But I think in general, if we're talking ranked and everything, she's probably even undervalued in SPL a little bit right now because of how good the items are on her, especially Serrated Edge, which I might upload an Arachne solo gameplay here in the future. Who knows? Serrated Edge is pretty ridiculous on Arachne, so Arachne over there in S. Ares, more of a counter pick god. He does have value in the situations where he gets the counter pick, like especially into characters that rely on their mobility, and there's a lot of characters like that right now. But the only problem with Ares as well is that there's a lot of auto attack junglers being played, like especially the Bacas, the Arachnes, the Nemesises, the Nemesi of the world. And because of that, he kind of just gets run the F down, if you know what I mean. So, yeah, Artemis, CT character. I think she's kind of just bad. Pretty easy to dive now, or for always, she's kind of been easy to dive, except for when she had a long duration CC immunity on her ult. She's also easy to camp in dual lane, and I'm pretty sure she gets owned by stuff like Freya. Freya, probably even Chronos, probably, just these magical ADCs that can kind of run her down. Although Oleron, she might have a decent matchup into, but other than that, I just don't see a reason to play Artemis over any of the other ADCs, magical or physical. Ardeo is not in the game right now, so she's going to go in non-existent tier because Ardeo and Hera haven't been in the game for like the last 3 weeks or 2 weeks. I don't know how long it's been, but it's been a long time, it feels like, which I don't really mind because Ardeo is a brain dead character and I never like playing her, but at the same time, she is a crucial part of the game, and she also is necessary for countering certain good gods right now. I'd put her in A+. She's really good in the support role. She's also good as a flex. Only problem is she's very easy to lock down. She has no CC immunity. That's always been her problem. And specifically in solo, she falls off really, really hard when it comes to late game. Only way you can engage with her is if you have Blink. Athena, I think, is slightly undervalued. She's probably A, kind of a pinnacle of balance as well. Always kind of has been, except for when in the early days of Smite, she was a broken support. But allows you to play the map really well in competitive. And as far as rank goes, she's, I think, a good flex. She can be played in solo. You can start proxying with her really early on, and that gets a lot of value in the current meta. If people try to come gank you, then you can just ult out. Wilkes as well, I think, is just round A. Pretty balanced god. You got to be really good at the character to pop off with her, but I think at the end of the day, she also counters some good picks that, you know, people that rely on drops like Uller and stuff like that. So good matchup into them, but you got to be skilled with the character. I think Wilkes is probably one of the higher skill cap gods in the game. Baba Yaga, pretty underrated in my opinion. Does a ton of damage. The only problem is it ramps up. Her early game is a little bit weak, so that's the only reason I don't think she's played as often. She's got to ramp up those abilities to get more damage because they don't really hit that hard early on. Her clear isn't amazing early on, and also if you're going to the stacking builds, you gotta ramp up those stacking builds as well, which obviously her passive does really well, better than other characters, but at the end of the day, you still gotta wait to do it. Baca is more of a counter pick god, probably B.A. If there was a B+, I'd probably put him in B+. Just another god, kind of like Ares. He's more of a counter pick. He's good against some healers. He can dive really hard, but he also has no CC immunity, so you can kind of punish him with that for characters like a Willix. And as far as like the dueling goes, his level 2 is actually pretty good because he's got a stun into a knockup, and the knockup isn't DR'd by the stun, obviously, so that's nice. But I think there's just better supports to play over him. And his flop is very, very easily readable. It's very telegraphed, so it's very easy to avoid it. Baca, I mean, if we're just talking about in general right now, I think Baca is kind of like S+, to be honest. This is a character that if you want to be winning ranked games right now, then I think you should be playing Baca jungle. The only reason I maybe wouldn't put him in S+ is that you can just ban him, and that's pretty bad. And he also has no flexes. Like, you can't really play Baca solo, and you can't really play him anywhere else besides jungle, so that might lower his value just a little bit. But at the end of the day, this is not only SPL tier list, but a ranked tier list, so I think he's probably one of the best gods in the game for winning ranked games right now. So the auto attack items are too strong. They're just too strong. Baron, another probably slightly underrated god. I think he's just A. Has some good matchup in solo, counter stuff like Osiris and some immobile characters that have a hard time getting out of his ult and getting away from his root. After he roots you, he can just get a full combo on you. But also pretty easily run downable. If you invade his blue buff on cooldown, it's pretty hard for him to defend it if there's just 2 W key characters running at him. So yeah. Bastet, more of a BT character. Another kind of counter pick and be good in those situations where she can dive really hard. Another character that doesn't have CC immunity, so it's pretty easy to punish her. Her early game is pretty bad. It's definitely pretty bad. You need to get those damage items online for her scaling for her to be really, really useful and really, really powerful. And because of that, I think she can kind of be abused in the early game, and usually you don't want that from your jungler. Also does not make good use out of any of the auto attack items right now, so not as valuable as the other characters. Bologna, I think, slightly undervalued as well. I put her in A+ because, I just talked about it. Auto attack characters are very, very prevalent. Bologna is very good against auto attackers, so she is a little bit more valuable. The problem with Bologna in my eyes is that whenever I play her, maybe it's just me playing her, but I always feel like I'm missing something. Like there's this one little like extra thing to put her in a really, really good spot. I don't know. Maybe somebody else agrees with me. Maybe more people agree with me. Hopefully a lot of people. Hopefully I'm not just horrible. Bracken recently got buffed, and I think he's probably better than a character like Ares or Bacchus, just because he's a lot better as a flex. Ares and Bacchus have to be in support, whereas Bracken is a good jungler as well as support, in my opinion, and also can be played in the solo lane. So sitting around A and maybe slightly undervalued because he is a magical split between the jungler, who's usually a physical, so that can be really good for killing people in the solo lane. But yeah, I think the only reason that he's not in B tier is that he's much more valuable as a flex pick. Camazotz, I kind of fallen off the Camazotz train. I still think he's a really good god. He's obviously really good in solo. Very hard for him to lose lane because he just has so much damage and a crap ton of sustain, much more than anybody does now because of all Gladiator and Berserker exchanges. But he's not seen as much in the jungle just because auto attack items are just so much better, so you'd rather just play one of those characters that can abuse those items. And so that kind of doesn't really make him a flex pick anymore. So he's really just the solo lane. And in the solo lane, I think you can survive against him relatively easily if you know how to play against him. So you just got to learn the matchup and learn to not get bullied in the early game, and then you'll be fine, especially when it comes to late game, because Camazotz does fall off. Cerberus, in my opinion, just around B tier god, such an easy character to kill. He is good at turning on tanks because he has so much DPS, but the thing is he has no CC immunity. His dash is really short. It's very telegraphed, very easy to just chase him down and run him down, and he's never getting away from you. Kind of like Thoth, in my opinion. So just too easy of a character to dive as far as the perspective of a solo laner. Cerberus actually probably, I think, hovering around A+ to S. Maybe if there was an S-, I don't know, I maybe would put him there. I'll probably just put him in A+ just because I think maybe a little overvalued by most people. I mean, the thing is, obviously lifesteal and sustain is very, very prevalent. So Cerberus's passive gets a ton of value. He also just got buffed. His 2 and his 1 cooldown got buffed. So he's really good in the solo lane when it comes to just trading with people. He's very good at a lot of the meta matchups that rely on their healing, like Amma, Kamazot, stuff like that. So very, very good against them. But I think slightly overvalued because he does fall off really hard when it comes to late game, in my opinion. And it's just pretty easy to kill and run down. Chalk, just another kind of B tier god. Can be good in some situations. And he's never bad in lane. The thing about Chalk is that he's never bad in lane. But he's only decent in solo. He's not a good flex pick. Don't play him jungle, please. Please, just don't play him jungle. And I guess you could play him mid. Shout out to Big Man Tings. But other than that, in all honesty, he's just kind of a god that's been kind of, I would say, what's the word here? Consumed by power creep, you know? They've buffed this god so many times, and he still just isn't really played much and really hard to make work. So he's just still B tier. He's been consumed by the power creep. Chang'e probably slightly undervalued in solo right now, to be honest. I think people have gotten really, really used to just having a really tanky frontliner who can initiate and dive the backline really hard. But I think if a team were to, or just if a player in the rank streets wanted to, you know, play Chang'e, I think she'd be perfectly fine and do really well, especially because healers are really good in rank. So if you were to play Chang'e, obviously I think her main role, probably her only really good role, is solo lane. You could kind of play her mid, but I'd rather just you play a very ranged character that can burst people down, and Chang'e doesn't really do that. So I would say A probably slightly undervalued in the solo lane. Chernobog, people were playing a lot of him towards the end of last season, and I still think he's pretty valuable, but I think he's more of just an A god. No real reason to play him over the magicals or some of the physicals, like I said, or like I keep saying about the hunters, and kind of a playmaking god. So kind of up to the player to see how good of a character he is. I mean, obviously that's the case with a lot of characters, but as far as his ultimate goes, that's a very, very high skill cap playmaking ability. Can kind of change a game if you play it right. Chiron, another, I think probably A, maybe B character. He's gotten buffed a lot, and they actually just buffed his 1 base damage. I think it hits for 100 at level 1, which is really nice. As far as the other characters in this tier, I'd probably put him in line with all these other gods. Just because he's a good flex pick. You know, maybe he's not as good as a character like Agni, but he can also play in Hunter or in the mid lane and get some value. His ult is very good for following up on people diving the backline. So we'll just throw him in A for now. Kronos, good at using Ring of Hecate. Not as good as the characters like Freya and Olorun, though, just because of that, I think he's probably A+ and not S or S+. They also did just nerf Ring of Hecate, and he's not really a flex pick, so maybe he's more towards A. Just in my opinion, I think he's more towards A, just because those items did just get nerfed, and I don't think he's the greatest character ever. Cthulhu, honestly, S+. Best solo laner in the game. We talked about it in the top 5 video, but definitely probably the best solo laner in the game. So hard to kill with his ultimate. Can just continue to dive the backline and be so obnoxious. Basically a better version of Nike from last split, and just does a lot of damage. And if you can die if their jungler in their ADC and their major are all hitting you at once and you have nobody following up on you. But if they're all doing that, then either you did something wrong or you're winning the team fight anyway because there's 3 people on you. But Colin, probably slightly underrated by a lot of people. I think he's probably around A+. A very, very good god. Definitely really good in lane. Still dominates most lanes and bullies people. Even though he doesn't have the Glad Shield, you never really need a Glad Shield on Cuckoo. In fact, when Cuckoo was first released, people were mainly building Mystical into Stone of Gaia on him when he was really first released in Season 5, when he was being abused at Worlds and stuff like that. That was that was kind of what people built. Cupid, actually pretty good right now. They've buffed him quite a bit, and they also recently buffed him. I'd put him in A+. Maybe he's not quite as good as these guys. Maybe you'd put him in A because of that. But I think you're going to be seeing more of him, and if I was just to guess, then I would throw Cupid in the A+. And those buffs definitely helping him out a lot. And he's also good with like certain builds right now because you can go Fail Not. It has % pen on him or on it, and it's really good for characters like Cupid who like CDR, but also like being able to do damage with their auto attacks and stuff like that. So Daji, I think you can make Daji work. The problem with Daji right now is that Nemean destroys her. Nemean and Shell both destroy her, so she's very, very, very easily counterable. As long as you build those items against her when it comes to like your rank games, or especially you'll see it in the SPL if she's ever played, she kind of gets owned by those just because if she goes Hydras, she's not going to get a Hydras proc. The shell's going to absorb it. Her one's going to be absorbed. It's just going to really be really hard for her to blink one somebody and then go into her ult and get a ton of damage off. It's still not horrible just because she's really hard to kill when she goes into her ult, but definitely a lot less valuable in this meta. Affluence, thank you for the Twitch Prime sub, and Steven O Plays, thank you for the Twitch Prime, man. Welcome to the Fonzo family, guys. Much appreciated. Disco, kind of slightly fallen off, but I still think she's a pretty good character. Only reason I think she's fallen off is maybe the other mages are a little bit more valuable now, and you also are playing more physicals because there's a lot of magical ADCs in the meta. So some of the mages have just fallen off just a little bit, but I still think she's pretty good. And if it gets back to a meta where, you know, there's a lot of mages in mid and physical ADCs, then I think she'd be probably A+. But just because of how the meta is right now, I'd put her in A. Erlang, in ranked and everything, I'm going to put him in A+. Very, very good god at just running it down in jungle, but also pretty good at running it down in support. Horrible solo laner. Don't ever play him in the solo unless you want to have fun and you just like playing the character. But also really good with a lot of the items. Really, Serrated Edge is really good on him just because whenever you go into a team fight and you blink on somebody, you instantly use your 3-2-1 and it's very fast. So then you'll have the Serrated Edge to auto-attack them down with it afterwards. Fafnir, one of the better supports in the game, in my opinion. Probably A+, maybe A. As far as the other characters, and yeah, I'd probably put him in line with these characters. He's better in SPL just because you can rush down objectives and burn stuff down with his coerce and you know, just the team play and everything. But I still think he's pretty good in ranked, and he's really hard to kill. So good at supporting his teammates and initiating because of his. Think about this: he has 3 stuns. My goodness, 3 stuns. Name another character in the game that has 3 stuns. Probably are some, but anyway, Fenrir, horrible. In fact, I'm almost tempted to put Fenrir in C. I'm going to put Fenrir in C, man. This character hasn't had any love. Well, I mean, he's had some love as far as, like, changes and stuff, but he just hasn't been, like, viable for, like, 2 years. I guess he was viable at the beginning of last season when people were invading as support, so he was decent then. But he's not very good in solo. It's really hard to make him work there, in my opinion. And as far as the jungle goes, maybe he could make decent use out of, like, Golden Blade and maybe, like, stuff like Serrated Edge and stuff like that, but I don't know. For the most part, I don't really think so. Maybe we could put him in B. We'll put him in B. I don't think he's quite that horrible, but yeah, pretty bad. Who's next to Afro? That's Amma, and then it's Arachne. Freya, you guys probably guessed it. S+. This character is ridiculous with the Ring of Hecate item, the new change to it, to what it is now. She's ridiculous with it. She one-shots people late game. Doesn't matter if you're a tank, if you're a squishy. The ring build is just way too strong on her, plus the lifesteal. She gets lifesteal in her passive. So then she gets power from from Typhons. Actually, I don't know if she gets power from it. I think maybe it's only from items that you get power from Typhons. But either way, it's just a ridiculous amount of lifesteal. It's very, very hard to kill her if you don't have anti-heal, and she still one-shots everybody on the map. Ganesh, another pretty good support in my opinion. His ult is very, very, very valuable, especially against these immobile ADCs like, you know, Freya, like Olorun and stuff like that. You'll get a lot of value out of his ult. And he's also just, like, kind of good at both things. He's good at diving, but he's also good at peeling relatively well and decent around objectives because of his AoE. Geb, another pretty good support, but I think he's more of A just because he doesn't have a ton of pressure early on and is more so a counter pick. He can kind of deny a lot of value out of other characters like Quang Execute. He can deny value from, like, Amma ults. Like Athena taunts and maybe like Anubis wraps and stuff like that. So more of a counter pick. I wouldn't just pick him every game and feel comfortable unless you're really comfortable on the god and you just like supporting your teammates. Guan Yu, in my opinion, decent last year because he was pretty good in the jungle, but you're never gonna play a Guan Yu or pretty much any warrior right now, in my opinion, when you could just be building Golden Blade and going these Serrated Edge characters. Basically these auto attack characters, so he doesn't get a lot of value there. And in solo lane, probably slightly underrated in solo. I think he can get some value, so I'll throw him in A. And maybe decent in support. Just because he has to sustain in solo lane, so it's going to be really useful for him in the team fight or in the laning phase, and not as useful in the team fights. But you know, he can still do some work there. His team fight isn't really as strong as I think people think it is, and that's why he's not really that great and not really worth playing. But at the same time, his laning phase is actually pretty good, man. It's actually a pretty good laning phase. I think it's hard to lose lane as Guan right now against most characters. Hachiman, kind of just a good ADC, kind of what you want from your ADC. Very safe. Never runs out of mana because of his passive. Kind of does what he needs to do. Follows up on people really well with his ult plus his 3 and his stun. And then also is pretty good at just like the auto attack with his attack speed on his 2 plus his, you know, just his range auto attacks on his 1. If you go crit on him, it's basically like an artillery strike. And it's really nice. Hades. Now Hades, I mean, since we're we're considering ranked and SPL and just casuals, whatever you're playing your conquests on. I actually think Hades is S. He doesn't really lose any lanes in solo, can snowball really, really hard, and is really hard to play against, in my opinion. He's actually pretty hard to play against and hard to prevent from snowballing. Ebo, probably just around A+. Pretty good in the jungle and decent in the mid, but he's mostly played in the jungle, so he's decent as a flex, but like I said, mostly just jungle right now. And he's also, I guess maybe we can throw him up in S. I'm going to put him in S, and here's why. He's really good at, not only in ranked is he really good, but he's really good at countering the auto attack characters like Nemesis, like Arachne, like Baca. All these characters rely on slows, so his 2 counters them really hard, but also he's just able to burst them down because he has so much damage. You can just knock them up and instantly ult them, and if that's a late game team fight, it's going to really be really hard for those auto attackers to initiate. So I actually would throw Hebo in S just for that reason. Hell falling off a little bit. She did get nerfed, but she's still a really, really good ranked god, and I don't think you can really go too wrong with playing her in the mid lane, apart from not having a lot of range damage, especially damage over walls, so that's something you have to look at. But still, it is ranked. The heal will get so much value, and you'll be able to dominate people. I'm still the best physical hunter in the game. Amazing. Still a good flex pick. Can be played in mid and ADC. Maybe in the soul lane if you want to get cheeky, get crazy. But yeah, still the best physical hunter in the game. Ridiculous. So hard to kill. So much mobility, from his ult plus his teleport. Got a lot of self peel with his knockup and his ult. Very hard to dive. Can't go wrong with this character. And probably the most broken thing about him is his vision. It is ridiculous what he can do, especially in a competitive game when he can tell his teammates what they're doing. Hera, the other character that's not in the game right now, so I can't even really tell you how good she is, to be honest. I really don't know. I haven't had any data to support it. But in general, I think with the fact that there's more physicals in mid and all that, she could get less value because you won't play her as much because you need to play a physical. But if you're playing against a physical, she might get more value because her Argus can dive them really hard. But at the same time, they do have physical, consistent DPS to burst down Argus. So it's hard to say. I would probably throw her around A. It's really hard to say without having her in the game, to be honest. Hercules, S. Very good in solo, but even better in support, in my opinion. Can very easily snowball rank games. You'll see people like Polar Mike, Aurora, and maybe even like Neilmon, and people like that playing this character. He's very, very good in the support role. You cannot trade with him early game. He wins basically every duo lane for free if you know how to play him. And because of that, he's just an S. I do think that most players probably can't play him to his optimal potential and make really, really good use out of him in the duo lane. But just because it is so ridiculous, like how hard it is to play against him in the level 1, the level 2, the level 3 in the laning phase in duo, that I have to put him there. The same thing goes with Horus. I think Herc's a little bit better than Horus, but I think that in general, most players are really, really good at just using Horus just because it's really simple. You 2 and you want them, and you just have somebody follow up on you and you basically one-shot them. The only bad part or hard part about Horus is his ultimate and making plays off of that, but it doesn't matter. He's really good at snowballing because he's really good at just getting those quick and easy picks with his guaranteed CC chain, stun into knockup that doesn't DR. Huyi, probably the second best or one of the better hunters right now. Probably just an A+. I don't think he's quite S like these other characters right now. And I don't think, like all these characters up here, you could probably top pick and ranked and feel really, really good about it and have a good chance at winning. Whereas Huyi, you probably want to see your matchup a little bit more, or just be like, you probably just want to be like a really comfortable Huyi player. You don't really have to do that with these other characters. So A+, very good at turning on tanks, and also has a pretty good matchup into characters like Heim. I don't know about the matchup into Freya, though. You'll have to watch Panda Cat for that. Hunbat's probably A+. Still gets a ton of value out of his ultimate, even though it's on a long cooldown. Very good at pretty much everything. The only problem, I think, with him, again, it just comes back to those auto attack items. He doesn't get a lot of value out of it. And Shell plus Nemean are pretty good against Hunbat, so that's kind of made him fall off just a little bit, in my opinion. Of course, it's my opinion. This is my video. This is my stream. If you were in my stream or my video for my opinion, then what the hell are you doing? Isis, God of Demonetization. Oh goodness. Oh goodness. She's B. Too easy to run down. Gets countered by Curse Dunk really hard, and all the anti-heal that people have to be building right now because of the lifesteal and everything. So just gets countered way too hard by that. She does have a lot of CC, but at the same time, that's kind of, I wouldn't say that's the mid laner's job. It's really the mid laner's job to do a ton of damage. And she does a ton of damage, but she's too easy to kill, in my opinion. In my opinion, what I'm saying that. Izanami, B. I think in ranked and everything, maybe raise her up just a little bit just because she can snowball games and get a ton of value out of her clear and everything like that. So for that reason, maybe we'll keep her in A. But another character where her escape is very telegraphed, very easy to run down. It gets countered by Erendite, gets countered by stuff like Crusher because it will reveal her invis. That stuff kind of owns her, but at the same time, she could probably win a game in 5 minutes if you play it correctly with her pressure and everything like that. The way to counter Izanami is you let her clear level 1. Actually, you don't let her clear level 1. What am I saying? You fight her level 1. You run at the support in the ADC. The ADC will be Izanami. You fight them so that they don't get a ton of value out of the wave clear, and they get less value because they're not as good at fighting level 1 just because, she just wants to clear the wave. That's what you do. You don't run away from them. No, I don't know what I said. There you go. Janice. Janice is weird, man. The good Janice players of the world, I'm talking like the Heroines, the Venenus, the Panda Cats, even though he's not in that role anymore. They make this character look really, really good, but at the same time, I think it has a really high skill cap, and it's also really a lot better in competitive because you can get a lot of value out of his ultimate. So I'd put him in A. Very cozy god. That's how I would describe Janice. He's very cozy, very hard to mess up as in he's very safe. It's very easy to get away from people, but he's also countered by characters like Susano, and Susano's not really played that much. So mobility's really nice, and I think in SPL, at SPL level, especially on a good player, it's probably like A+, maybe S. But in general, I think he's just kind of an A god. Jing Wei, honestly, probably one of the best hunters in the game. Very, very easy. Such an easy god. Very safe god. Very hard to punish. Very good with the crit build still right now. And I don't know. You just can't really mess up with her. So that's why I put her in S. I wish this character would just get nerfed into the ground, man. I'm sick of her. I'm sick of seeing her. Jorm, speaking of being nerfed into the ground, this character definitely fallen off a lot since they nerfed his auto attack damage. That is a ton. If you think about it, they basically nerfed it by 3 each tick. But if you think about the course of a game, so let's just say like a 25-minute game, you know how many instances of tick damage that's being removed by the 3 damage? How much extra damage is being taken away from that? That is a crazy amount of damage throughout the game. So, in my opinion, falling off a bit from that. But also, I think that kind of just like a worse Cthulhu and gets run down pretty easily by the auto attack characters. I would say really easily. Jorm gets run down by the auto attack characters. That's part of the reason I think he's fallen off as well. So he's probably hovering around A to A+. And I thought he was overrated before, so we'll throw him in A for now. Kali, even though she's an auto attack character, doesn't get as much value out of these other characters just because her early game is really bad, whereas those other characters don't have as bad of an early game. And I would say that she's more, in general, she's just a late game character. So as far as like ranked and stuff goes, I wouldn't always recommend to play late game characters because a lot of games are decided in the first 10 minutes. However, some games do still go late, and she's still a really good character, especially with the auto attack items. So just kind of like a A+ god in my opinion. Capri, I think one of the better supports in the game. I would put him in S because I do think he's better than stuff like Fafnir, than a character like Ganesh. But he is not a flex pick, so he doesn't get that value of being a flex pick like Cerberus does. So maybe that's why you could throw him a little bit below. He's hovering around here, though. He's a pretty good support, and you can pick him in most situations. His 1 does not DR, so he's very, very good at killing tanks. Very good at just CC chaining them and just locking them down. He also combos really well with the auto attack characters because if they just dive the backline really hard, like a Baca goes, blinks ults in, gets a ton of haste and fatalis value, gets a ton of AoE damage off with his auto attacks and his ult, then Capri ults him and brings him back from the dead, which is probably like the only problem with auto attack characters is that their late game they can kind of get turned on and bursted really fast. Arthur falling off a bit, but I still think that he's a pretty good soul laner, and in general, still wins lane really hard because he has so many abilities and does a ton of damage with those abilities. Base damage is crazy, so I'd probably have him in A+, probably sitting around there. Cthu, they nerfed him. He used to be pretty good. I would say the nerfs hurt him pretty hard, and as far as like the meta right now specifically, there's a lot of physicals in mid, there's a lot of auto attack mages in mid, so you can't really get a ton of value out of him. And yeah, if you're gonna play Cthu, just play Merlin. I feel like Merlin's a better Cthu. You just throw abilities on waves and then run away, and then late game you're going to do a lot more damage, a lot more convertible damage at that rate. Goomba, BT character in my opinion, kind of a flex. You could probably play him in solo and support, but for the most part he's just a support. And Goomba is one of those characters that maybe you feel like you're doing a whole lot when you're playing him, especially if you can get a lot of early kills with his root, which is really good. Obviously the root is very good in lane for getting kills. But he's also one of those characters when you play against him that you feel like he's really not doing a whole lot. Maybe he's a little bit annoying, but he doesn't really do a whole lot. He doesn't do a lot of damage compared to the characters they've been releasing lately. And his peel is okay, but I don't know. He just lacks that oomph, in my opinion. He lacks that oomph. He's good into characters like Kali and Zhang, though, that want to go really ham and you can just take him out of combat. but that's not really worth it at the end of the day. Kuzenbo, A tier character, loses value when people go double lifesteal just because his reflect damage doesn't get as much value, so he can't solo people as much. But at the end of the day, he's also good against these immobile characters in the meta like Freya. He's good against Heim because he can push him away from his 3, and he's pretty good at diving Oleron, who's a pretty good pick right now. So Loki, probably guessed it, D tier. See you later. No, I think in general, like, Loki's actually pretty good for ranked in solo lane. A lot of people don't know how to play against him, and he can get a lot of wins through his split push value. If this was SPL, obviously he'd be D tier. But I think because this is considering ranked and stuff like that, you could honestly put him in C, maybe B. If it's like Dragon Story Loki, then obviously the character is going to be a little bit higher. All memes aside, Dragon Story is pretty good at Loki, right? And he can get some wins with it. But I think in general, most people probably aren't as good as him. And yeah, he's probably just like a CT character. Taco, thanks for the
love you,
man.
Dad. Excited to see you play again.
Welcome back.
Been a while since I could catch stream.
Welcome back to the stream, man. Appreciate it. Medusa, she got buffed, but she's still easy to kill because of her dash. I think at the end of the day, that's probably the only reason she's not played a whole ton. However, she's a good flex in my opinion. She's good in ADC and in mid possibly, so that's why I would have her a little bit higher. Mercury, even though auto attack junglers are a thing, Mercury doesn't get as much value as some of these other ones because he doesn't make as good use out of the attack speed items like Serrated Age and stuff, because you'd rather just go crit on him and not go attack speed because your 2 gives you so much attack speed that you lose a lot of kit value when you do stuff like that. So more of just an A tier character. Still pretty good though. Merlin, probably A+. I guess one of the better mage mids left. But at the end of the day, pretty easy to kill in my opinion. He does turn on tanks really well, so you have to have the right characters into him, and you have to synergize with your jungler really well when you're diving him. But he's still he's another cozy god. Very good at just like clearing the waves, getting to late game, and doing what he does best, and that's just a ton of damage while having 80 abilities up. Mulan, good flex pick right now. Can kind of be played in support, jungle, and solo. I think her best role is solo. She bullies a lot of matchups. So I'll have her in A+. She bullies a lot of matchups, and obviously has sustain on her too. Characters don't really have Glad Shield or Berserkers now, so get some value out of having sustain over other characters. And like I said, wins most matchups, does a crap ton of base damage early on. So Neith got a ton of buffs. I would say that Neith is probably A+ because she's another really good flex pick. She can be played in ADC or in mid, and she's really good in ranked because you can impact other lanes with your ultimate to try and help them snowball while you do your own thing in your own lane. So because of the buffs and everything like that, I'd actually probably have her in A+. I just realized that, there's going to be a lot of characters in A+, but that's just how I feel about things, okay? And again, at the end of the day, it's a tier list. You should never look at a tier list and be like, oh, this person has Baron Samedi in A, that means I can't play him unless all 18 of these other characters are banned first, you know what I mean? It's just about just those little things that put them a little bit above them. Comfortability is still key, though, at the end of the day. So if you're more comfortable on Chernobog than you are on Jing Wei, then Chernobog is probably a better god for you, I would recommend, based on the tier list, that to practice the gods that are a lot better in the meta, That makes sense. Nemesis, S+. Auto attack items are amazing on her. She W keys really, really hard. What's funny is Nemesis and the character I'm about to talk about as well, Neja, are 2 characters that you can build like any item in the game on and just feel good about it. Like they'll do stuff with it, right? They're still gonna do stuff. She's really, really hard to kill, very slippery, can kill tanks, but is very good at killing the backliners. Outtrades them really well with her shield plus her auto attack items, and kind of just, you cannot go wrong with picking her. You can first pick her and really not have to worry about it ever. Neja's another one of those characters that you can build anything on and do well with, but I don't think he's as valuable. I think he's more of an A tier character, especially in the jungle. He is a good flex pick though, good in support and in solo, but just a little bit less valuable than I think most characters. Even though, okay, so since he is a good flex pick in all those roles, and again, we're considering ranked as well at the end of the day, he can snowball games from the support role, and in solo has some good matchups and can kind of carry a game from solo in my opinion. So I would throw him in A+. Nike, I think still relatively decent, but the problem is Sunder just hard counters her now. She is hard countered by Sunder. Her ultimate gets no value. A lot of talking, sorry chat. Her ultimate gets no value if people build Sunder, and that's really all there is to it at the end of the day. Maybe the slow, but they also nerfed her slow, so it's 2 seconds less now. No, it's just, she's falling off because of the nerfs for sure. Nox, B tier character. She's so inconsistent because you have to hit her 2-1s, and even if you hit a lot of 2-1s, I wouldn't say she's more valuable than a lot of other mages. And I mean, that's really all there is to it. Just doesn't get enough value out of the numbers in her kit and the inconsistency. Nuwa! Nuwa's pretty sick. Her ultimate is amazing in the late game team fights. One of the best abilities in the game when it comes to late game. And is also pretty good against some of these auto attackers that want to get in, get their damage off, and then immediately come out, you know, at low health by barely getting out, like Kali, like Baca, Arachne when she goes into her ult to run away. You know, these characters late game, they have to try and all in at the beginning and try and jump away and live. And Nuwa's very good at punishing them when they try and get away. One of the better mage mids in my opinion, but again, it's not exactly the meta for them right now. Odin got nerfed a ton. Kind of a bad character in my opinion now. His cooldowns are way too long, horrible in solo because of that, and maybe just okay in support, but because of that, I think he's kind of just Olaron S+ in my opinion. Just another Ring of Hecate, Typhon's Fang abuser. Amazing when it comes to objectives, amazing when it comes to just killing people that go on him. His ultimate gets a ton of value out of every team fight. Doesn't matter if they have 5 of the best characters that can dive him, it still gets some value. And because of that, I think he's in line with these other characters right now. Just amazing in the meta with the items. Osiris fallen off a lot since Glad Shield. Doesn't really bully people enough anymore, in my opinion, without Glad Shield. And he falls off in a late game team fight. So you can kind of get away with just going a team fight warrior against him or a team fight guardian and still make it to that stage of the game. He's still going to bully people, don't get me wrong. He just doesn't bully them enough. And if you know how to play against him, you'll be fine. Pele, I think is actually pretty good. Might be viable in solo, kind of as a flex pick. But obviously one of the better junglers in the game. Doesn't use the auto attack items. That's the only downside. But still uses the other items really well. And she's really good with the Soul Eater right now that has 10% pen on it. And can snowball a ton of games just from her early game pick potential. And you know her late game isn't that bad because of Heartseeker. Persephone, slightly worse I think than these characters. I still think she's probably one of the best mages in the game. And maybe if I had an S, like a tier in between, I'd put her there. And I can't go wrong with picking her, don't get me wrong. I just think that she's slightly less valuable than these characters, and I think you can play against her if you have the right matchups and stuff like that. So, you know, S is still a very, very good tier for somebody to be in. So a broken god, in my opinion. Poseidon, A probably, maybe if there's a tier right here, I'd probably put him here. A to A+. One of the better mages as well, I think. Very good at killing tanks. And can also relatively use the Ring of Hecate Typhons and stuff like that decently, but he's still not the best user of them, and still, you know, isn't a physical. And if you want to play double mage where you have a mage ADC, mage mid, then maybe he's okay for that, but then they're going to be stacking magical defense and your Kraken won't get as much value, so you got to look to that. But at the end of the day, he's still really good at killing tanks. Ra, too easy to run down. Cursed owns him. All the anti-heal owns him. And he doesn't even really out-sustain people. If the enemy team has no healers, but they have 3 characters that just run double lifesteal, they basically just sustain as much as you anyway right now. So that's why some of the healers get less value in the meta, especially because healers aren't going to be building lifesteal to begin with. So just a little bit worse, but still like a balanced character in my opinion, probably around A. Raijin, another really good mage. I think if you're going to play in mid, Raijin mid is still really good. He did get nerfed a lot, but he's still just one of those cozy gods that you can't really go wrong with. He's safe. He still does a lot of damage. And his abilities are really easy to hit, in my opinion. Or at least his 2-1 combo is. Ult, maybe long range is going to be harder to hit. Rama, one of the other, I would say, better hunters in the game. Probably A+. Probably between A+ and S right here if I were to have a tier right here. I'll put him in S just because I think he is one of the better hunters. He got a ton of changes that really helped him. His mana, he basically never goes now. His ult is really, really valuable in team fights. And one of the better physical hunters in the game, in my opinion. Does a crazy amount of DPS because of his steroid. He's also able to crit people through walls with his one, which is silly. If you guys have seen the Incon clip, you'll know what I'm talking about. So I would put him in A+ to S. We'll just have him in S just for fun. Ratatasker, everybody thought Rat would be just this broken, absolutely broken god with the changes to his acorns. I think he's decent, but at the end of the day, he got definitely heavily overvalued after the changes. And I think he's kind of just the same old Rat, right? Like, his acorns do some cool stuff, and they definitely help him out a little bit. But when it comes to the late game, he falls off really hard. It's really hard for him to get into the team fight and be really, really useful. And I think the number one important thing is that Nemean is really, really good against Rat because it will block his crit on his ones. So, yeah, pretty good counter to him. Robin, pretty good jungler. I don't think he's amazing. Kind of just a comfortable pick for some people. He's really only viable in solo. I think you could see him a little bit in solo, a little bit more in solo, especially with certain builds where you go Bruiser. But for the most part, I think he just hovers around an 8 tier god. Still kind of the same. I think there's a reason to play her over these mages down here. Problem is, her ult really isn't that good of an ability. It's very inconsistent, and you got to get resets on it for it to be really, really amazing. But her 1-2 combo in team fights is very, very good against tanks, and she's relatively safe with the movement speed from her ult and her teleport over walls. Serket, not good at using auto attack items, therefore not very good, but does counter some of the meta picks and is pretty good at getting picks on the map. So she's still always going to have that value for snowballing games, and for that reason, I'll put plus. Set, pretty good at using the auto attack items right now. Decent as a jungler and as a soul laner, but for the most part, I'd probably have him in A+, maybe between A+ and S, where I'd put him. Yeah. Scotty, too easy to kill, very easy to run down. In fact, I'd probably have her in B. No real reason to play her over magical ADCs, no real reason to play her over the safer, more consistent DPS physical ADC. But she's down. Sobek, I actually think is probably pretty good in solo, and that's why I have him in A+. I don't think he's as good as he was before. He definitely got nerfed, and some of the meta changes have made him worse. He's a lot worse against these gods that want to get loose because they can kind of just out-rotate him and out-clear him. But at the same time, I think he is a pretty good soul laner, and you can't really ever lose lane if you pick. So good at using every Gifakate. Very safe character as well. I think maybe she's overvalued by some people, so I have her in A+. But as far as ranked and everything goes, she is... Can't really go wrong with picking her, in my opinion, right now. Wukong! Actually, probably one of the better soul laners that I recommend people to play right now. So I would put him in S. Pretty good with the soul eater changes. And a very safe god. And can impact the teamfights a lot and do a ton of damage because of the bruiser builds. So Susano, not good at using the auto attack items. And for that reason, he's really probably like an 8 god. Sylvanas gets run down way too easily by these auto attack gods. Every single auto attack character is just going to run this stupid tree down. I'm sorry to say it, Bob Ross. I love you, but can't be played too much. Terra, good with the bruiser mage builds right now. And a pretty good support. Pretty good support. Problem is her level 2 is really bad. So if you zone your ADC of the ghost minion, you hit level 2 to try and get a kill play. Terra's really bad at that. She doesn't really have a good level 2 at all. Whereas other supports really do, and they can kind of just bully her out and kind of snowball the game on her. So you got to be careful of that. Thanatos, another character, doesn't really use the auto attack items well. For that reason, he's down here. But Thanatos gets a little bit of value in his execute against characters like Cthulhu, who are obviously very, very hard to kill. So maybe you could see him played a little bit more for that reason, but specifically as a count. But still really good at snowballing ranked games, especially with those early. Always has some value there. Morgan, probably one of the better mages to play just because she can transform into a lot of the broken characters right now, which is actually a really big deal. Imagine transforming into a Cthulhu as Morgan, you know, good counter pick. So for that reason, she's probably A+, hovering around there. Maybe A+ towards S. Very good late game as well when it comes to ranked games because she can look for easy picks and one-shots with her invis. Thor, good flex pick, still a really good jungler. Does way too much damage, man. His ult does way too much damage. Can one-shot people with the Heartseeker build. Even though he doesn't use the auto attack items well, he's so good at using the other items that are still good. Like Heartseeker's still amazing. Crusher's still amazing. Erendite's still amazing. He's so good at using items like that that he still gets a ton of value. And obviously, having 2 stuns, range poke is amazing, even against auto attack characters. The only thing you got to be careful with Thor is that you will get run down if you use your hammer in a precarious spot, if you will. You know, you'll get run down really easy. Thoth, very good at doing damage, but very bad at surviving. Very easy character to dive when it comes to soul laners and jugglers. And, I mean, it doesn't change when, you know, characters like Arachne, Baca, Nemesis, when those characters are meta, it's probably even worse for Thoth. Because of that, he gets less value and is probably A. Tyr, heavily overrated god, but he's very cozy. I think if you are ever playing, okay, anybody out there that isn't a soul lane main right now and gets stuck in the soul lane, if you need a character to play that you won't feed on and you may still do a little bit of work on, just pick Tyr, okay? Tyr's just one of those characters in my opinion, and pretty easy to play around in team fights in my opinion as well, so really not that crazy. Uller, probably S. It's very close for me to put him in S+, because he's a really good flex. He could play in ADC and mid, and I'm just going to put him there just because he can easily snowball games, has some of the craziest not base damage, but early game damage when it comes to, you know, because he has like 3 abilities at level 2 that he can, 4 abilities, I guess you could say, and gets a lot of kill plays because he has a stun on his axe, and also as a flex, like I said, can be played in mid and gets a lot of pressure there. But Mana, I think, is pretty good right now as a soul laner as well because he can get loose really well. He's really good at farming. He can rotate and do his thing. And he does get countered by Curse Song, so be on the lookout for that. But only thing you got to worry about when you're playing Vamana and they have Curse Song is if you dive their backline and they Curse Song you, don't just keep running at them. Just play a little bit slower. Wait for your jungler to help you out. Maybe go back to other people. Try and distract him. Don't just be a person trying to kill them. You know? Vulcan, kind of just a B tier character. No reason to play him over the other mages that I've described, and also no reason to play him over physical characters or auto attack mages. X-Ball is weird. Probably just an A tier character. Probably not that bad as an ADC. But again, he's just kind of one of those characters that you don't really see a reason to play him over the other ones. He does get some value out of his ultimate, especially in a competitive play, but as far as rank goes, you're not going to get as much value. Jing 10, A+. Can't go wrong with picking this character. He's good in solo, in my opinion. He's also really good in support. Very hard to kill. Kind of does a lot of work, and he's also good against some of these meta characters like Freya, these auto attack characters because of his 1, and he's also good against Oleron because of his CC and his ult. Yemoja. It's hard for me not to put Yemoja in S+. The only reason I don't is because I don't think that most support players in all levels of rank can get a ton of value out of her. Her skill cap is pretty high with her 3s, with her ultimates and everything like that. So for that reason, I'll put her in S. However, she's probably the best support in the game, so you got to keep that in mind. Ymir is actually pretty good, man. His passive is pretty sick now because of the Frostbite. Decent as a flex pick, can be played jungle, solo, but mostly in support. But he's more of a counter pick. You got to keep that in mind. The only reason I have him up here as a counter pick is that he also counters a lot of gods that are meta that can't get through his wall or can't get past his wall. And he gets a ton of duo pressure. He gets a crap ton of duo pressure because of his early Frostbite damage and his clear. So pretty good. But again, another character that gets run down by auto attackers very, very hard. So you have to be comfortable on the character to get some value out of him. Zeus, another pretty poor character that there's no reason to play him over these other characters that are safer that output similar amounts of damage. You know what I mean? Like, why would you play Zeus over Merlin? Merlin's going to do a lot more damage and still be safer, you know, at the end of the day. So that's the only reason. Zhang, pretty valuable in my opinion. The buffs to him were pretty good, and he's also good with the Warrior's Blessing changes and the lifesteal changes. I think he's pretty good with a Bancroft's Typhon's build. The lower he gets, the more damage he does, and the more he lifesteals. So it's a good combo on him, and I think he's most valuable in solo, but you could kind of maybe see him in mid at some point. I don't know. Maybe somebody will pull it out, but mostly good as a solo laner because he's really good at initiating, especially with Blink. And Blink is really good on him, and you usually go that in solo. So, and yep, that's everybody. So we've gone through everybody. Nobody in D tier. I think a lot of characters are viable right now. That's why you see a lot of characters in A+ and A. Also, it's early on in the mid-season, I guess, early on in the split. So the more the split progresses, you'll see the extremes start to rise. You know, maybe you'll see more characters down here, and you'll see more characters up here just because people will get a better idea of things. But I do think that right now in the meta that there's a lot of characters that are viable, and it just kind of comes down to counter picks. It comes down to comfortability. It comes down to, you know, the compositions of each team and what you guys need. So, but yeah, that's pretty much it. So if you guys have any questions, feel free to leave them down in the comments. This is live, so I'll get you guys questions here in chat in just a second. But yeah, if you guys learned anything from the video, feel free to leave a like, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace out.